right. Welcome on in. Welcome on in. So glad to see everybody in the chat. Yeah, sorry for pushing the show back a little bit. But yeah, we're here. Tonight is Wednesday, February 4th, a Wednesday night. We're all here. So there's that, right? There's that. Thanks for being here. Good to see you. And we have a lot to talk about. We do have a lot to talk about. And please, no complaints about the audio. Ignore it. Okay, just ignore the problems. We've been having problems with audio, so let's just roll with it. But I'm glad to see everyone. There is so much happening, and I felt that we needed to come on and talk about some things, and um, and basically wake some people up, shake some people up. Uh, Many of you are aware that there's a lot that's starting to float to the surface, right? Internationally, and it's just so funny how people will make all this to do about Epstein files, but they won't look at what's staring them in the face with Delphi. And that's absolutely insane. And we're going to talk about that tonight. And some people won't like it. And judging from the happenings right now, I would say that a lot of people in this community don't like what's happening. You have to ask yourself, why is that? Why is it that the bloodlusters and the Free Rick Allen crowd are so averse to any mention of Kegan Kline or the Dropbox? Matter of fact, I call them Dropbox defenders. Dropbox defenders. And that's very weird that you have a uniparty of individuals. The very same individuals who we've been alleging for over a year now are uh, the Guilters, the Bloodlusters, and the Free Rick Allens, the controlled opposition, a single unified party of narrative controllers, a PR contingent, for lack of a better word, made up of sex workers, CIs, local criminals, international criminals, social media influencers, strippers, hackers, and thugs. And as I've been thinking about this, I started thinking about the food pyramid and how this is very similar to the food pyramid in that there are different levels and all levels are required. Okay? For instance, you need your foundation, you need your level two, your level three, all the way to the top of pyramid. And that's what you would have in any finely organized structure. And remember, we're talking about a criminal enterprise. We're claiming that this is an organized criminal racketeering enterprise which is in need or demands a RICO brought down by the feds. And word on the street is the feds are already in Indiana nosing around into law enforcement, and all of that's happened in the running of the counties, in the running of the state police, in the running of the courts. So our stance here is that this RICO will unfold. It's inevitable. Remember, all these crimes have been committed for the most part out on the surface, and all of the information is for the most part out on the surface. Now, is there information we have access to that the public doesn't have access to? Yes. Okay. But does it mean that's always going to be that way? No. And I'm working on something right now that I will be delivering soon that's going to make a lot of what I'm going to say tonight understandable. Because the primary thing that I see is that people just don't understand. And that's concerning the innocent viewers here. You guys out there who are actually normal people. Okay? Now, of course, the bad actors understand. The unit party understand. The bloodlusters and the Free Rick Allens, they understand. Okay? It's the innocent people out here who don't really understand, and you wouldn't understand unless you're aware of a lot of information and unless you've been placed in the target zone. Because when you're placed in the target zone, you function on a different level. Okay, the fight or flight kicks in, and survival of the fittest kicks in. So you start functioning on an entire different level, on the level of survival, which in the human being and in all life is very, very powerful. On top of that, we've got a lot of disinformation and misinformation that's been interjected by this community and by law enforcement for years, okay, since day one. So, understanding that, you have to understand that when you're looking at something that is controlled in this way and that is so complex due to the sheer amount of misinformation and disinformation that's been put out there, you have to understand it's a lot of cognitive dissonance. It's a lot to wrap your mind around, and it's a lot that you won't understand until you do understand. And you all will understand more and more as time goes on. And so, when we look at this, the question arises, why Dropbox defenders? Why Kegan Kline protectors? Why is it that these people on both sides refuse to acknowledge the involvement of Kegan Kline, admit the facts about the confessions of Kegan Kline, the confessions of Ron Logan, the information that has been disclosed, the information that's already out in filings and in transcripts? Why do they refuse to acknowledge the obvious? Well, because they're not good faith. They're not here to talk about the truth. They're here with an agenda. And the agenda is defending the Dropbox. And if you believe at all that there was something to this Jeffrey Epstein experience, then you also have to be willing to admit that there could be something to this Kegan Kline Dropbox. And here's why. If you zoom out and you look at it and say, well, there's these people out here that saying that's absolutely ridiculous, and there's nothing like that could happen, and there's no way a cover up of this magnitude could ever occur, then ask yourself, you have to start with the basics. The basics are, is there child predation and trafficking, or is there not? Does it exist in the world, or does it not? Is it real, or is it unreal? And the absolute fact is that it is real. And if it is real, and if there are instances in which it has already occurred internationally, nationally, and on a state and local level, then you have to start to put together the fact that the possibility exists that it is possible in reference to this crime and the claims that are made. You understand? And so let me see if I can do something like this. Let me get busy. Okay, let's see. I can do it now. Perfect. Thank you for your patience. Just getting there. I apologize. There we go. All right, so let's do it. All right, let's see if you can see this. Now, what you're looking at here is my playlist page. Okay, so if you notice my playlist here, see if I can show you here. See my playlist? Notice here, this playlist called The Club of Lafayette Delphi. Okay, hopefully everyone sees that. The Club of Lafayette Delphi. As you see, there are 5 videos in this playlist. And if you notice, this is Jalen Rain. Okay, Jalen Rain. Jalen Rain. See her? The Club of Lafayette Delphi. I highly recommend any of you doubting what I'm saying tonight, anyone doubting what I'm saying, go and watch this playlist before you comment. Okay? So go to the Club of Lafayette Delphi, watch all 5 videos, and then come back and comment upon my content. Okay, as you see, this is the prof at the prof, you know, underscore the prof. This is my channel. These are my playlists. You'll see The Appeal of Richard Allen, The Club of Lafayette, Delphi Murders Exposing the Massive PR Campaign, Delphi Murders Weird Stuff, Bridge Guy Video Deep Dive, Garrett Kurtz, Frank's Memorandum, Delphi Troll Farm, Beauty of Colorado, Delphi Murders Movie Preview. So, The Club of Lafayette Delphi, okay? Please go and save that to your favorites or something. Save that to your favorites, okay? So let's see. I'll remove this. Save that to your favorites. Go watch it. Because after you watch it, then come back and finish the rest of this show, and you'll probably be able to start to get up to speed. All right? There's some very, very concerning things this woman mentions, including the kidnapping of girls who were, as she put it, young. Okay, the kidnapping of girls who were, some of these girls, they were young, she says. The kidnapping of these girls, the bringing them to a holding place, all right, the selling them to elite members of society, and then being trafficked out of state, okay? Start to think of that, and then listen to the story that I'm going to tell you tonight and where we're going. And with an open mind, it might start to occur to you that, hey, maybe this ain't so crazy after all. And just for proof or evidence of what I'm saying, you have to understand the chaos that is ensuing behind the scenes and in our real lives right now. In the past 24 hours, I've received multiple death threats. There's an entire smear campaign unfolding, false allegations on multiple fronts about my personal life and about the lives of my family members, a pattern of harassment and targeting of me and my family members, literal threats of physical harm. Let me ask you, would this be the way that it is if I wasn't saying something that's extremely uh, uh, fear inducing in some people. In other words, people have something to protect, and it's worth committing crimes to protect. Because, hey, at a bare minimum, harassment is a crime, cyber stalking is a crime, doxing is a crime, harassment is a crime, and individuals can be held liable for defamation. Now, when you have all of that coming your way, there's a reason for it. And it's because people are protecting something that's worth risking all of that to protect. And I'm not the only one, okay? I'm not the only one. I'm finding an odd pattern here. Why is it that the individuals who are speaking out most loudly about this potential kidnapping of Libby that ended up in a murder of Libby and Abby and the potential connections to the fact that they were sexually exploited, targeted, and included in a Dropbox that others are alleged to have had access to, and that the Indiana State Police and a prosecutor in Delphi specifically looked away from and ignored information on, and that the judge disallowed and the defense neglected to follow up on? Now, let me ask you this. The people who are out here claiming Rick Allen is innocent, the Odinist did it, right? Rick Allen is innocent. The Odinist did it. Why would it be the case that they would be out to destroy individuals who say Rick Allen is innocent? Kegan Kline did it with possible involvement of individuals who might have also practiced Odinism or some variant thereof. Does it make sense to you? Why would people out there screaming Rick Allen is innocent, free Ricky Bay, free Rick Allen? Why would they be screaming Kegan Kline had nothing to do with this? Shut up or I'll kill you. Why? Why would they out to be why would they be out to destroy the lives of whistleblowers? Have you swatted, targeted, arrested, jailed in fear of your own life? Defamed all over the internet? Someone makes it make sense. Make it make sense. Because it looks like to me we're dealing with Dropbox defenders. And it's kind of funny because I can trace this back quite a ways. As a matter of fact, the queen of the cranks, when she first stepped foot on YouTube, do you know what the MO was? Don't talk about or share or read the Kegan Kline transcript. Now think about that. Don't talk about or read the Kegan Kline transcript. And then if you go to the various social media platforms of the same group, it was always the rule. Don't mention the families and don't mention the Klines. Don't mention the Patty family. Don't mention the Kline family. Well, it's funny because then you go on the opposite side. The CIs. What do they say? Don't mention the family. Kegan Kline had nothing to do with it. And it's funny because we look out here and everyone says, "Well, we don't know what happened with this crime. It's such a mystery." Oh, really? Is it really a mystery? Is the Delphi murders really a mystery at this point? Is it really? Like, be honest with yourself. Who out there is mystified by the Delphi murders? Let's say you go out there and you clean off your glasses, right? Clean off your glasses, put them back on, and take a fresh look at it. What's the most obvious, sensible scenario? Is it Brad Holder organizing a ritual to sacrifice two children in the woods on a particular day, and it happens, but he wasn't there. He had nothing to do with it, other than organizing. Or is it? Oh yeah, Ron Logan, Lone Wolf Killer. Ron Logan, Lone Wolf Killer. He totally did it by himself. Or is it? Oh yeah, Rick Allen totally did it by himself. He's a lone wolf killer. Yeah, oh no, yeah. Do any of those make sense to you? Genuinely, ignore what the defense has said in the Franks memorandum that you've all been brainwashed to believe. See, because you are biased because you have not escaped the mental trap of the limitations of the Franks memorandum. So therefore, you cannot think beyond that Franks memorandum. Let's say the defense fucked up majorly and might have even been compromised at least 50%. What if that Franks memorandum was no different from the PR campaign or from the Gilters? Let me ask you a question. Are PR campaigns ever engaged by law enforcement or prosecutors' offices to handle the narrative around a crime before it goes to trial, during, and after? I'll wait for your answers in the chat because this is an easily Googleable. I don't think I can talk. This is an easily searchable answer. And the negative thing here is that the truth is that it happens all the time. It's standard practice, especially in high profile cases. So the question is that what we're seeing in Delphi going back years? And the answer is most likely, yeah. But like I said, so many people are operating from a lack of information, an overabundance of disinformation, straight up confusion, uh, main character syndrome, and the limitations that were established in your minds when you adhered to the Franks memorandum because of your concerns about the case, and you only got to know that information and that theory. And because the defense ran with that theory, you believe that that is the truth of what happened. And what you miss is that you don't know any of the Kegan Kline information, or at least any that hasn't been publicly revealed yet. You know a little of it, but not all of it. You know very little of Ron Logan information, or a minority of the information that exists. You don't know much about the investigation in this case because a lot of items were not included in the trial record. Therefore, they solely exist in terms of uh, investigative product that was turned over to the defense. So when you're operating with half the information or less, 200% disinformation, misinformation, and an entire narrative control campaign aimed at protecting that Dropbox, things don't make sense. And we're dealing with the situation where this team is so strong and this effort has been so sustained that there are many people who got close to the truth that were terrified off the case. Terrified off the case. In other words, they ain't here no more. How many are aware that Kegan Kline was very familiar with elements of witchcraft because he had practiced it in his earlier life? I mean, hey, that's the new hippie shit, right? That's the new hippie shit. Half you ladies in the chat, you're also very familiar with it because it's the hippie shit of our generation, right? You also remember that Mr. Robert Ives said those bodies were moved, first point, and staged, second point, with multiple non secular signatures, third point. So, what I'm going to do tonight is we're going to walk through some documentation because lots of people have wax in their ears and they can't hear. They might not hear the first time, second, third time, fourth time, fifth time. Okay, so some things we're going to look at tonight we've already seen, but I feel that they need to be said and seen again. They need to be said and seen again. I need to do it all over, and I'm going to have to do it repeatedly because there are people out there denying basic facts. There are social media influencers out there denying basic facts. There are free Rick Allen individuals out there denying basic facts. And hey, we're supposed to be about the truth, right? And it's funny because I say, I got receipts, bro. I got receipts. And they say, oh, receipts are not proof. Oh, yeah, but wild fucking speculation about the Odinist is proof, or wild speculation about Richard Allen is proof. The absence of any evidence is evidence. Because you think someone did something, they did something. No, when I say receipts, I mean I have receipts in the form of proof. And I've consistently displayed them, and you're going to see more in the next week or two because I have a bombshell coming for you. I have a major bombshell coming for you. And you'll see when we get there. Everyone's going to be ecstatic. But I thought tonight we could look at receipts in the form of law enforcement and court product. Therefore, you cannot say that what I'm showing you is not proof of the claims or the words that I am saying, which is why I always put everything on the screen. I don't know if everyone has picked up on that yet. Why does Prof put stuff on the screen? because I could sit here and read it to you without having to put the thing on the screen. That's possible. It's actually easier. But I put shit on the screen so that you can consistently fact check me. You can see that what I am reading is coming from a source that I am revealing to you and then displaying to you and reading from. And that's why people come here. That's why people come here. And it's kind of sad because you have new people in this community. There are new listeners who've come in, right? New viewers. There's new people behind the scenes who are assisting us. We're getting tips coming in. There are new tips coming in. And there are also new creators out there. And so everyone new coming in needs to be aware of everything because everyone's a target. Remember, I showed you in the past that in many of the threats I received, they said that your audience is fair game, which means you guys in the chat or in the comment section. So everyone should be aware. So we're going to start tonight with Jerry Holman's deposition. And we're starting here, page 155. Now, I implore you to listen to what is said and then have a little brainstorm with me, okay? Have a little brainstorm. So he says, Kegan Kline, a man that's fresh, a human that's fresh on everybody's radar. So was he a suspect? Yes. And is he still a suspect? I think he's suspected of communicating with the girls, like I said. But the evidence through our investigation indicates that he was not in the area during that time of the homicides. And he was kind of like Ron Logan. Another person that there were considerable resources from all your agencies that were directed towards him. Yes. Did Kegan Kline ever admit that he actually participated in this crime? I mean, that he knowingly, willingly played some role in this crime? Yes. Tell me what that admission was. He admitted to setting up a meeting with his dad. Okay, hello, this is Tony Kline. And a guy in Delphi, Ron Logan. Okay, so I'm giving you the commentary. He admitted to setting up a meeting with his dad, Tony Kline, and a guy in Delphi, Ron Logan, initially. He changed his story and said that it was him and his dad. He said that he rode over to the bridge and his dad went to meet the girls and he stayed in the Jeep. I believe it was a red Jeep. No, correction. He didn't say he stayed in a red Jeep. He said he stayed in a beige or tan sedan. Okay, so this is what I mean about lies and mis and disinformation. Kegan literally said a car. Okay? Not a red Jeep. So when we're looking at facts, even Jerry Kline here is wrong. Jerry Holman here is wrong. This whole red Jeep was disinformation because you know why? Let's break that down for you. Because a red Jeep never passes that camera or any camera in that neighborhood. So therefore, by saying it's a red Jeep, you can therefore prove that he's not there because there's no red Jeep. But you know what was there and what was witnessed and what is likely on film? A tan or beige colored sedan. Because there's a tip on it. It's in a report. That's the car that Kegan said he was in. He says, which we located the Jeep, searched it, didn't find any evidence indicating anything that Kegan said. Yeah, because he wasn't in a red Jeep. He also said they threw some items off the bridge. Yes, he did. We searched the bridge and we found no items. Yes, because you searched the wrong area, which we'll be revealing that in the future again. The bridge was in Peru, but you searched the wrong area. And as a matter of fact, you people are going to learn that Ron Logan also said the same thing, that he disposed of his burner phones that Kegan gave him, loaded with CSAM, out of town. And he goes on, we used any or every investigative technique that we could try to find evidence indicating that he was involved, and we could not, other than he admitted to being Anthony Shots and communicating with the girls and setting the meeting up. Do you have any doubt in your mind that he was Anthony Shots? No. What kind of alter ego or whatever phrase they use in pop culture these days? No, no doubt. In fact, he was basically, in some ways, kind of, and admitted indirectly to some of that recently in Miami County, right? Yes. Was there ever a time when you definitively excluded him because of an alibi? No. Okay, guys, put a pin in that. Put a pin in this one. Was there a time when you definitively excluded him because of an alibi? No. Put the brakes on that, because we're going to talk about that very same thing in a moment. So, according to Jerry Holman, there was never a time when he was definitively excluded because of an alibi. Put a pin in it, because the answer to, as far as Jerry Holman is concerned, no, we never excluded Kegan because of an alibi. No, line 21. It's kind of an odd question because he's not giving you an alibi. He's saying he's there, but I assume you were working a reverse angle to vet his credibility. Right. That's why I asked the question. Right. I understand your question. So the reason that we eliminated him from actually being at the crime scene is because we know he didn't ride with his dad on the route that he took, because the video shows. Okay. Again, the video shows no red Jeep passing because they were not in a red Jeep. According to Kegan, they were in a car. Furthermore, he says, we also know that he is actively downloading child porn on his phone at a residence in Peru during the time that we believe the crimes occurred. Put the brakes on that. So another reason for eliminating Kegan, according to Holman, is that he's actively downloading child porn on his phone at a residence in Peru during the time that we believe the crimes occurred. Okay. And you know what he told people? Do you know what he told people on the inside? He said to them exactly this. He had installed an app on his phone that would automatically download stuff to make it look like he was using it. And he intentionally left it in Peru when he went to Delphi with that app running to throw off the cops. I haven't shown that to you yet, but it's coming. This is sort of a prelude. So if Kegan set up an app on his phone to be downloading and left that phone in Peru, then he pre-planned to go to Delphi and make it look like he was in Peru. The red Jeep is a non-issue. So when you're looking at both of the reasons they eliminated Kegan, it's not an alibi. Holman just said on the previous page, it's not an alibi. He said he was excluded or eliminated. All right, continuing. So Holman continues with the assumptions. And remember about assumptions, you make an ass out of yourself when you make assumptions. ASS, assumptions. So he's asked, so you have some digital forensic evidence that he was active on the computer or his phone, you said, at the time that you believe these things occurred? And Jerry Holman's assumption is during the time frame that we believe these crimes occurred, he was actively using his phone. Right. The app that he had engaged to do such was actively downloading material over in Peru when he was in Delphi. Okay. Do you know the location of the phone when it was being used? Yes. Okay. Is it through geofencing? Yes. Where? At his residence in Peru. How do you know that? Through the forensic evidence. I was told that they could find out through phone records that it was, quote, being actively used in that area with the data. I can't explain geofence data dump. I know I was given a report orally, not a written report. There is one, but I was told that he was on his phone in Peru at his residence. So you see what I mean? How they're using this as proof of an alibi? No way. No way. Because again, you got to get to these you got to zoom out and look at the potential possibilities. Potential possibilities are there exist applications in 2017 that will make it look like you are actively using your phone. Or B, there did not exist any applications in 2017 that would make it look like you're actively using your phone. And the answer is definitively, without a doubt at all, that yes, in 2017, there were indeed, or there did indeed exist applications to install on your phone to make it look like you were actively using your phone. And this is exactly what Kegan confessed to in Miami County. Now, think about it, y'all. Do you think that Kegan knew Jerry Holman had this information and was going to state this in the future? Because Kegan said this before this deposition ever happened. Kegan had no way of knowing that Jerry Holman was going to claim he was actively using his phone in Delphi. But he had pre planned by downloading that app, installing on the phone, activating it, and leaving it at home when he left home, which shows premeditation. Did you go back to Kegan Kline after you learned this information and have another communication and a meeting with him? Yes, we did. What was his explanation for your findings? He had no explanation for it. Cat's got his tongue. Why would the cat have his tongue? Did he continue to acknowledge his responsibility for part in this? Well, he changed his story quite a bit, but yes. But was it consistent in that he said he was there, and Holman says that his dad did it? Did he ever ask you specifically for any consideration, as we say in the business, in exchange for the information he was giving you? And this is where I need you all to, again, wipe your glasses clean, wipe the sleep from your eyes, put on a fresh thinking cap, and listen to this response and really think logically about it. Use discernment and critical thinking. Jerry Holman's answer is that he wanted to be put into witness protection program. And listen to this. He never asked for any consideration like you're talking about, like as far as plea bargains. I think there were some discussed, but he didn't give us any information that we could verify. But he was wanting basically to give this information to, quote, get put on a witness protection program. There was no agreement between you and he or his representative that if he sat and talked to you, he was going to get A, B, and C in return. Not me. The prosecutor might have made. You're talking about Sinkovics? No, prosecutor McClelland. So now we need to do some more critical thinking. First level, all Kegan wants is witness protection? Why wouldn't he ask for more? Why would Kegan not ask for more than witness protection? And then you inverse that, the inverse of that. Why would he only ask for witness protection? Why would Kegan only ask for witness protection? Does this smell to you like he might be afraid? Well, let's see. How many bodies do we have in the Delphi body count? How many bodies do we have in the Delphi body count? How many bodies were shot up and then burned? How many bodies were just burned? How many people mysteriously died? How many suicides? How many people were shot in cold blood? Keegan's not asking for a single damn thing other than witness protection. Sounds like he's afraid of something real. Next thing, he's not talking with Jeff Sinkovics about this. He's talking with Nicholas McClelland about this. If Kegan had no part in Delphi, why is he discussing with Nick McClelland? Why isn't he discussing this with Jeff Sinkovics? Additionally, a lot of you don't really know some things, okay? And this is basic. Very, very fucking basic. Do you know who was sitting in court over in Miami County? I'll wait for it. I'll wait for it. Because, you know, we had people sitting in court come and tell us a list. So remember, Kegan's trial is about what? His CSAM charges, right? That's what Kegan's trial is about. Prosecuted by Sinkovics in Miami County. Who was sitting in court? Let's see. I don't see a single damn answer. Unified Command? Doug Carter? Yeah? Yeah? David Vito? Yeah? Why are the Delphi team going sit in Kegan's courtroom? All together as a unified group of individuals, all sitting together. If Kegan Kline had nothing to do with Delphi, why were Delphi prosecutors or Delphi investigators and Doug Carter, why were they all there? Maybe you can explain away Doug Carter saying, "Oh, it's a high-profile CSAM case." Yeah, like there's not a million. How many other major CSAM cases in Indiana in Doug Carter's tenure did he go sit in? I'll wait. I'll wait. How many has Doug Carter gone sat in? How many CSAM cases have the Delphi investigators gone and sat in? So at the time your team sat down with him and talked to him, you're not aware of any deals that were made that he would get something in return for providing information, whether accurate or not accurate? No. Why are you kind of hesitating? Hesitating. Why are you kind of hesitating? At one point, I know, says Holman, the prosecutor, Nicholas McClellan, was going to offer him immunity. But I think that's different from when you're asking, from what you're asking. That's why I'm hesitating. Hit the brakes. Hit the brakes. Are you telling me the Delphi prosecutor, Nicholas McClellan, when all Kegan is asking for is witness protection, the Delphi prosecutor, Nicholas McClellan, is offering him immunity? Why would you offer someone immunity who had no part in this crime? See, this is actually a receipt, right? Is this me making it up? Holman hesitates and he says, at one point, I know the prosecutor was going to offer Kegan immunity. This is Holman's deposition. Now that he's in jail, has there been any, now that he's convicted, has there been any attempt to reach out to his legal representatives to forward your investigation in any way? Not yet. No, because they turned the other way. See, what happened is they hyperfixated. They decided that a decision was made that they were going to solely focus with laser precision on Rick Allen Lone Wolf Killer, and that's when everything pivoted. Do you think that could still happen? Yes. Why is it that you would want to do that at this point? I think you always want to give him a second chance, or in this case, maybe a fifth, a sixth, to be honest, and make things right if he knows anything. So the idea is he's been sitting for a while now on this other case, and he might come up with a different version because he's seeing the world differently. Well, I think his world has changed. He was in luxury Miami County, and now he's in a correctional facility, which is obviously different people there. I don't know what goes through their minds when they get there, but I think he knows it's for real now. Maybe if he does have any information. Okay, and I'll tell you the answer to that. Because what Kegan was telling the people he loved at the time was that he was going to talk if he got witness protection once he got to prison. He was not ever going to talk in Miami County. He was going to wait to get over there and serve his real time. And once he got settled and he decided what he needed and what moves he was going to make, he consistently said for years that that's when he was going to talk. And by that, I mean with McClellan and Holman. All right. Now they pivot here to Tony. Let's talk about Tony Kline. Was he a suspect in the case at any point? Yes. And all these agencies still working his angle too? Yes. Was there a point in time when he was definitively excluded? Well, and he gives a non answer. I think so. I mean, we exhausted all other efforts. Tell me how that happened. At this time, with the information we have, we can put him in Delphi or on the bridge. I mean, we can't put him in Delphi or on the bridge. He was through the forensic evidence that we got through the digital phone data. Okay, so once again, how do they clear Tony? According to their concept, just like Kegan. Okay, digital phone data. He was also given a polygraph, and there's no evidence. We searched his house, we searched his phone. Like I said, there's no evidence indicating his involvement. Well, other than the statements of Kegan, did he have an alibi on that particular day that you were able to confirm? I don't recall. I think he had an alibi, but I can't recall. David Vito would be a great person to ask about Kegan or anything about Kegan and Tony Kline related. Do you recall him taking a polygraph? I do. What do you recall the result to be? Like I said earlier, he passed the polygraph, or did I say that? Or I thought he did, or I thought I did. Was this polygraph conducted by this examiner in Lafayette? No, it was not. It was Matt Collins, I believe, with the state police. Was Tony Kline cooperating with you at all times during the investigation? Not all times, but I don't think any defendant cooperates all the time. Tell me what you remember about him not cooperating. I mean, he showed up and we talked to him. He lied to us quite a bit. We had surveillance on him, and when we called him in, he said he was working when he was actually out in his garage drinking a beer because we had surveillance on him. So he lied to us. So I think he's not. That's not cooperative. If you're lying to the police, I don't think you're cooperating. He lied to you about little stuff. Little stuff, yeah. Multiple times when we confronted him about his involvement, he would stop cooperating or just get up and walk out. Things like that. Can't remember if we got consent to search his house or if we had a search warrant. I believe it was a search warrant. Was there any forensic connection made between Tony Kline and these girls? Digital forensic information? No. Were you able to determine definitively that Tony Kline was not utilizing his son's devices? No. There's still that possibility. That is a possibility. Those two were living in the same house a short period of time. Yeah, they were living together during that time frame, but then Kegan moved out. When you say during that time frame, in the weeks leading up to this circumstance, yes. The February 13th incident, yes. Do you know, or is there any information that suggests that Kegan Kline had any connection with any kind of hate groups, extremist groups, or anything of that nature? No, not to my knowledge. Same question in regard to Tony Kline. No, not to my knowledge. What about Dave Liebert? Do you know Dave Liebert? Personally, no. Okay. Now just give me a moment. Let's see. All right. This is the end of this one. I need to pull up the next page. Let's see. Oh, okay. Make sure I'm on the right page here. Let's see. I'm not. Okay. Let me turn the page. Oh, let me start at the bottom. Okay. So he says we're not going to get into all this. Every person you've polygraphed, were you specifically involved in any polygraph examinations where you were sitting there? Okay, one, tell me who that was. Tony Kline. Where did that occur? Peru. It was a couple years ago. Yeah. Okay. Was this around the time that I believe Trooper Vito, excuse me, and there was a female officer that were kind of working Kegan Kline angle? Two separate investigations. The female worked it in 2017, and Vito picked it up in what? 2019. So that would have been after. Kegan Kline was polygraphed earlier in 2017. Tony wasn't polygraphed until later. Okay, so I guess just a quick summary so we can all get caught up to where we are now. So he says there's a woman who's investigating in 2017. Vito picks up in 2019. Kegan's polygraphed in 2017. Tony wasn't polygraphed until later. Okay, we're going to fast forward a bit. So with the polygraph exams, that's the only one you participated in is the exam with Tony Kline that I observed partial. Yeah. And what was the result? He passed. Was his passing that exam enough to convince you that he was not part of this particular act or crime? No. We'll get back to that later. Okay. Well, you know what he's leaving out there? You know what Holman is leaving out? That he absolutely did engage in a polygraph attempt with Reese Davis. He's excluding, in other words, this answer is not completely accurate because not only did he sit in with Tony Kline, he sat in with Reese Davis, and he actually turned that into an absolute shit show. And you're going to be learning about that in the future um, of what happened with Reese Davis. Okay. But with essentially, he didn't, they never polygraphed Reese. They connected Reese and then started yelling at him and disconnected it essentially. And it was Holman. It was all Holman. Okay. Let's look at this. Now, we're picking up a little later in this deposition. Okay. And this says Kegan Kline, a man that's fresh. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't I already just read this? Did I go back a few pages? Okay. I got a forward. Sorry. Okay. Here we go. I see. Okay, here we are. Sorry for that. Total rookie job tonight. Here we go. Okay, he says, I think we covered the Kleins. Ron Logan, was he ever involved in anything suspicious? No. What? See, what you're seeing play out here is deflection or distraction in real life here. Okay. There we go. Okay, sorry. He says, for some reason I misplaced my pages. But they're going over all the Frank's memo shit, so let's see. There we go. Okay, here we go. Got the wrong one out. Here we go. So let's stop here. So we're moving on to this one. Now let's look at what this is. This is the direct exam of Trooper David Vito. This is Dave Vito. Okay, so we've heard from Holman. Now we're going to hear from Vito. All right, so you see here, he says he works in the Indiana State Police Lafayette Post. He says, you've been involved in this investigation basically from its inception. He says, briefly in 2017, for a few months, and full time in April 2019, where that was your change of direction. Change of direction, David Vito comes in. And he says, in the course of your duties, let me just ask you this. Did you work with Nicole Robertson? I did not at the time. Did you in 19? No, I did not. Okay, all right. Were you a member, so to speak, of the Unified Command? After 2019, okay, so you were kind of one of the brass that was meeting on a consistent basis and talking about the investigation. I wouldn't say brass, I don't hold that rank, but I was part of the core team. Thank you. And during that, let's go back to 2017. Was there a time period very early in this investigation where law enforcement or investigative team was seeking information regarding Liberty German's phone? Can you repeat? There were contacts that she was having on those phones, on her phone. In 2017? Yes. Yes. And so it's fair to say that early on it was discovered that she was communicating with others, just people who lived in the outside world, people outside of Delphi. That's correct. And one of those individuals identified, at least on her phone, as someone by the name of Anthony Schatz. Yes, sir. My correct recollection is that in the communication strike that, were there communications between Liberty German and this Anthony Schatz profile? Yes, sir. And my correct recollection is that those came on both Snapchat and I think it was Instagram. Is that generally accurate? I believe it was just Snapchat. Oh, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. That at least I was able to find records for. He corrects it. See? It's corrected. Okay. And so did you ultimately conduct an investigation into the identity of this Anthony Schatz profile? So in 2017, I did not. I was not part of that investigation in 2017. I started the investigation into Anthony Schatz around March of 2020, which is almost a year after the change of direction. Okay, so you start putting your timeline together. Change of direction. A damn year later, Anthony Schatz. At this time, had there already been an investigation into the identity of Anthony Schatz profile? Yes. Who was behind that? So you were working with somebody else's investigative product? That's correct. And is it fair to say that the individual was an individual by the name of Kegan Kline? Yes, sir. Rozzy, may I approach? Freaking out. Okay, freaking out. Remember how I said, every time the shit gets deep, McClellan freaks out, right? It's just like clockwork. All right. Sorry, did it again. All right, there we go. And he says, this is a press release from ISP. So he shows the ISP press release. You guys all remember that, don't you? All right. He says, I'm trying to get to the point here. That press release in summary is asking for public assistance with regard to the fictitious profile identified as Anthony Schatz. Yes, sir. So you're reaching out to people, to the public at large, and saying, anything anybody knows about Anthony Schatz, please tell us. That's correct. And on page 2 and 3, those are pictures. Essentially, there's four on page 2, four on page 3, photographs of this. Well, are these photographs associated with the Anthony's profile, Anthony Shots profile? Yes, that's the individual's name is not Anthony Shots, but associated with that profile. And so were those photos included in the press release? I believe so. So you actually attached the photos of a real human, right? Somebody, this real live human, correct? Yes. Vince Kowalski. Yes. Who is it? Vince Kowalski. Okay. I don't recall that. I didn't recall that, so thank you for that. And this was offered up because you were seeking assistance regarding this profile? Correct. Okay. So Razi admits it. It's admitted. So the ISP and Unified Command casted a pretty wide net as far as it relates to this interest in Anthony Shots profile, right? Can you clarify that? Well, you were seeking public assistance through a public portal, right? Advertising, basically. Asking for assistance, yes. Is a It's a formal press release done by the Indiana State Police? Correct. And the intention of that is to disseminate that information really around the world, theoretically, right? Right, to try to obtain information, correct. Well, is it fair to say that at some point through the work of your investigation or investigators, it was determined that there was a gentleman by the name of Kegan Kline? I shouldn't say gentleman. There was a man by the name of Kegan Kline who was associated with that profile? Yes, sir. And where did Mr. Kline live? In Peru, 67 East Canal. And so when it was, just generally speaking, that Kegan Kline was first approached about his association with the Anthony Shots profile, I believe that was February 25th, 2017. Okay. Food for thought. Food for thought. Just over a month after the Delphi murders, Kegan Kline is approached about the Anthony Shots profile, February 25th, 2017. We don't learn of this until 2020. How much time elapsed there? How much time? 3 years. Okay? There's a bookend. 3 year time period. From the time that they inform Kegan that they know about the Anthony Shots profile, 3 years elapse, and then ISP announces it to the world. What happened in those 3 years? Where was Kegan in those 3 years? Could some sort of cleaning up happen in those 3 years? Could some sort of whitewashing, wiping of the internet, deleting of evidence, and spoilage of evidence and all of this have happened in a 3 year period between February 25th, 2017, a month after the murders, and then March of 2020? Are you familiar with all the facts and circumstances that occurred, generally speaking? I would say generally yes. In other words, there was a report. Who actually reached out? Who actually made the first contact? I believe that would have been Tracy Kuntsek with the state police, and I believe Agent Willem with the FBI. Who was the FBI agent? Agent Willem, I believe was his name. Willem? And is it accurate to say that there was confirmation that there were communications between Anthony Shots and Liberty German leading up to February 13th, 2017? Yes, sir. And even on that day, even on February 13th, 20, do you guys see that? Even on February 13th of 2017, the day they say these girls are murdered, even on the day, there's communications between the Anthony Shots profile and Liberty German on February 13th. Yes, sir. Even on that day. So it's undisputed in your mind that there were communications between the two. Yes, sir. Do you believe that Kegan Kline was the communicator, at least on the Anthony Shots end? And the answer again, listen, for the most part, what does for the most part mean? In my line of work, we would call that the caveat. That's the caveat. You say for the most part because you're making an allowance for someone else. Okay? He says, do you believe that there may have been more than one communicator? Again, it's possible. So again, he leaves that space. Caveat, it's possible there was another communicator. And would the other communicator have been his father? Number 20. Tony Kline, yes. Tony Kline, yes. So this is indicating that the official stance here is that the other user of the Anthony Shots profile is Tony Kline. Whom he lived with? Correct. So Tony Kline was also kind of consumed into this investigation along with his son Kegan. Is that correct? That's correct. And you're generally familiar with the circumstances associated with the investigation surrounding those two people? Yes, sir. During the course of your investigation, did you discover that Kegan Kline actually owned a firearm? Did anyone miss this? Kegan Kline owned a firearm. Yes, I did. Did you ever recover a firearm from him? Essentially, process that as evidence in this case. I do not believe we were able to locate that firearm. Kegan Kline owns a firearm. They can't locate Kegan's firearm. Now listen, because it gets deep, really fucking deep for all of you deniers. Okay, you saw some photos of that firearm, right? That's correct. And was that firearm of interest to you? It was. Okay, tell the judge why. It was a Smith and Wesson 40 caliber firearm. Mic drop. Smith and Wesson 40 caliber firearm. Okay? Question for you, who actually paid attention throughout these past years. When the ballistics team was first looking at this round and they were looking for a weapon, what type of weapon did they say they were looking for? I'll wait. They said that they were looking for either a Smith and Wesson 40 caliber handgun or a Sig Sauer 40 caliber handgun. Do you recall that? Smith and Wesson 40 caliber, Sig Sauer 40 caliber. They said that according to their looking at this unspent round, it had to be either a Smith and Wesson 40 or a Sig Sauer 40. How many know that? It's right here. Line 15. Kegan owned a Smith and Wesson 40 caliber firearm. Is it fair to say that after that, when the crime scene was processed, there was recovered from the scene an unspent round near the bodies of the girls? That is correct. And if I recall, it was a 40 caliber round, right? Yes, sir. And so one of the reasons that you were interested in this firearm is because it was the same caliber as the round that was found at the crime scene, correct? But you were not able to recover the gun, right? No, sir. Is it accurate that there were actually pictures of him with the gun? I don't recall pictures with him, but there was pictures with his friend Dirk Hayes, I believe, with the firearm. And then ultimately, when Kegan was interviewed in this case, is it accurate to say that law enforcement learned that he had various electronic devices that he was communicating to people outside of his household? That's correct. Basically, the public, right? Yes, sir. And so I'm just going down the list. He had at least one, if not two, iPhones. Is that right? I believe so. A Samsung phone. Do you generally recall that? Yes, sir. A tablet, maybe more than one tablet. I believe it was one tablet. I even saw that he had an iPod, which kind of took me back in time. Yes, sir. And do you agree that all of those items, or at least a majority of them, that was discovered had content that was associated with child pornography? Yes, sir. Is it fair to say that during this investigation, this case, that the ideal that sex may have been a motive was pretty obvious amongst Unified Command? That the idea that there may have been some sexual motive to this crime was common knowledge amongst Unified Command? Yes, sir. Let's back it up. Let's back it up because we do this like we do in the classroom. You know what I'm saying? We do this like a classroom. We go back and we reinforce the pertinent points. Sexual element to this crime. Yes, sir. Why would that be? Because it's obvious. Just the fact that these girls are at some point nude or undressed, that in and of itself is a sexual element. Now, in addition, if there's some sort of sexual trauma, if there's some sort of bodily fluids, if you get what I'm saying, was this common knowledge among Unified Command? Yes, sir. So there was a real interest in the fact that Kegan Kline had all of this child pornography essentially in his possession. A separate case was developed to investigate just that, yes. But that consistency between what you believed may have happened in this case at this crime, strike that. There was a consistency between what you believe might have happened in this case at the crime with some of the materials you were finding. I guess I don't understand the question. That's probably because it's a poor question. Let me withdraw. Do you agree that there was a belief that sex may have been a motive in the Delphi case? Yes, sir. And do you agree that obviously that would have involved two minors? Yes, sir. And do you agree that Mr. Kline had a lot of material on his phones and tablets and electronic devices that relate to sex with minors? Yes, sir. And is it accurate to say that a lot of Kegan Kline Anthony Schott's profile material was current? In other words, he was transmitting this material close in time to the crime in this case. It spanned over years, leading all the way up to the point. Yes, sir. And so at some point, your investigative team directed that they were going to administer a polygraph to him. Is that right? Yes. So I'm going to take a detour here. So, what is being revealed here if you really back out and look at the broad picture here is that, yes, sex was definitely considered a potential motive in this crime scene. When they were investigating this crime, all the way up to this deposition, sex was a potential element. Okay? Because these girls are both minors, being 13 and 14 years old, and because Kegan Kline had a plethora of CSAM involving girls just that age, the possibility existed that it was something to look into. So for us to now be in the perspective limited by this tunnel vision and this framing of the defense that this was not a sexual crime is still absolutely ridiculous. The potential, if you don't believe that Richard Allen lone wolf killed these kids, then what you have to admit or allow for is the fact that the potential still exists that a sexual element was still a part of this crime. In other words, if you erase the lone wolf killer Richard Allen, if you erase the Odinist ritual, and you just back off of this case and look at it from a bare minimum, from a 30,000-foot view, you're going to have to admit or allow for the fact that there was the absolute possibility and probability that there was a sexual element to this crime because of the fact that those children were not only undressed at some point in time, but they were later. One of them was left undressed. Okay. Furthermore, you have to then admit the possibility that crimes against children of this age range might be perpetrated by an individual or individuals who are interested in sexual activities or targeting of children within this age range, which therefore admits the possibility that this is a crime committed by people who are interested in the sexual activities of minors who we call pedophiles, which is a very long way of saying that the possibility existed and still exists. If you think that Richard Allen did not commit this crime, you still have to acknowledge the possibility that there exists the probability that this crime was sexually motivated against these two minors by pedophiles or a single pedophile if you think it's a lone wolf killing. And that's a huge element to this, because if you're trying to put some framework around this to enable your understanding of it, and if your framework doesn't include that this is probably or has the probability of being a sexually motivated crime with targets who are minors, therefore pedophiles have committed this targeting, then you're not really seeing like properly. You have to admit or allow for this framework, because if you disallow it, if you flip it and look at it from the other perspective, if you disallow the possibility that this was a sexually motivated crime against children, therefore likely committed by pedophiles, then you're therefore limiting the possibilities, which is unfair because you don't know what happened in this crime. And if you're limiting it, you're excluding a probability. Okay. So he gets into this. At some point, they were going to administer a polygraph. Yes, that was before I was involved. But you're aware it happened. And there were resources exhausted on him in terms of his involvement. Yes. And it's fair to say that he was denying early any connection whatsoever to LG or Liberty German. Yes, sir. That's called lying. Okay. That's called lying. So now we get to the point where Vito is acknowledging that initially Kegan was lying about knowing any connection or having any communication whatsoever with Liberty German. Why would Kegan be lying about that? And he was denying responsibility for any child pornography that existed. Yes, sir. Oh, so he's also lying about the CSAM. So he's lying to you, basically your investigative team, back in 2017, which we know was February 25th when he was approached, right? At first, yes. My recollection in reading the reports is he was pretty much lying about everything that you asked him about or your team asked him about. At first, yes. I recall seeing in one of your reports, he actually, around the time he was polygraphed, went back and wiped out some of the information on his phones. Yes, sir. Do you remember that? I do. I think he just basically deleted all the apps that he was communicating with. Is that accurate? There were specific ones, Snapchat and some other ones. And did you find the evidence of information that suggested he may have some culpability in this case at that time? It's unknown because the material was lost. Bruh, bruh, bruh. Are you telling me that Kegan Kline successfully after he was initially identified as the Anthony Shots person, Kegan successfully, in the intervening years, went and deleted information that therefore erased from the Indiana State Police and the FBI any evidence? How is that possible that Kegan himself can destroy evidence that pulls it out of the view of the FBI and the state police? Someone who knows law enforcement. Please tell me how in the fucking world could Kegan ever disappear information from forensic examiners at the ISP and the FBI? Line number 16, it's unknown because the material was lost. So when you start going around and running around and talking about these 70 days that were deleted of interview rooms, and you talking about the marathon footage, make sure you remember this. Kegan Kline successfully deleted information from the purview of the fucking FBI and the Indiana State Police. That's a wake-up call. And so it could have been connected with his involvement in this case, the Delphi case. Sure. Now, there was an interview of Mr. Kline, and I'm sure you're familiar. It was February 25th, 2017. Does that sound accurate? Yes, sir. Do you recall during that interview, strike that, do you acknowledge that that occurred at his dad's home in Peru? Yeah. And it occurred in one of our vehicles that we have parked, or that was parked outside. Okay. And do you recall that in that interview, initially he denied responsibility, right? Yes, sir. But at some point during the interview, he started to change his story. February 25th, 2017. That's a little over a month after this crime. He was kind of beating himself up, saying he was a piece of crap and things like that, right? Yeah, I believe so. And then eventually he acknowledged that he had been lying to the police about his connection with Anthony Shots' profile. Yes, sir. And ultimately, is it accurate to say that you were able to confirm undeniably that he was Anthony Shots, basically? That he was the person who was operating that profile online? Yes, sir. And communicating with Liberty German in that respect? Yes, sir. All of it on the day that the girls came up missing? February 13th, 2017? Did you also learn from Mr. Kegan Kline that in the week or so after the girls came up missing, he and his father went off to Las Vegas? They did go to Vegas, yes. In the week, or so after the girls ended up dead, they ran to Las Vegas. Did you learn that his father had at some point offered him money to stay out there? And here we go with the very bizarre statement. Now, listen to this very bizarre statement because this conflicts with the statements of Kegan Kline himself. Now, listen how odd this is. So, Kegan says they went there to hide. Vito says the Vegas trip was pre planned, and I believe the money to stay out there was later. So, there was an offer of some kind? Yes, after they came back. Do you acknowledge that he was not able to offer you an alibi for February 13th that you could corroborate? That is correct. So let's get back. Let's get back to his phone running this app at his house to make it look like he's in Peru. Do you acknowledge or confirm that you were not that he was not able to offer up an alibi? That is correct. What I recall is that he may have said he was with his girlfriend or something. He gave multiple different stories to investigators then and throughout my interviews as well. Can you say that again for me? To the investigators in 2017, he gave information on what he was doing, and then did it change? Then it did change a little over time. So he gave inconsistent stories about his alibi over the course of the investigation? Correct. But were you able to ever clear his alibi or any of those versions? We were able to disprove pretty much everything that he had said. Okay, so he gave you a story. He said, hey, I was there on February 13th, and then you later proved that wasn't true. That's correct. So the further you went, the harder it got to even identify where he was on February 13th. Ultimately, we were able to go through his phone data, show that he was at his residence using his phone that day. It was just his phone at his residence? Correct. Whether or not he was using it, you don't know, right? There was some data, I was told, that it was being used at the time. Yeah, well, Kegan says he downloaded an app to make it look like that and he left it at home on purpose. And then Rozzy says, but his father had also had access to it, right? Potentially. And he lived with his father. Correct. And you had concerns about his father's involvement in this case as well. Correct. Now, do you recall Mr. Kline admitting to law enforcement that he actually did exchange, I think, these photos where he admitted DDD here too, page 2 of 3 with Liberty German? I believe so, yes. And he was essentially offering up these basically as an alter ego or some kind. Correct. Do you recall him telling law enforcement that he actually deleted information regarding his communications with her, Liberty German? He did admit to, I believe, blocking her and deleting the application he was using to communicate with her. Okay, trying to destroy proof that he was communicating with her. I'm sorry? Destroying proof that he was communicating with her. Communicating with her and probably the other underaged individuals. He did actually say that he had been communicating with some of her friends too in the week or so leading up to this, right? That is correct. And I do recall in one of the video conversations, I have a note here at 2:13. At 2:13. Hello. I have a note here. It was at 2:13 that there was a suggestion from one of the law enforcement officers that he had some of the same physical characteristics as the picture of what we refer to as bridge guy in this case, remember? You'd have to clarify. You don't recall that? Strike that. What I recall from watching this video is that there was some suggestion by the interviewer that Mr. Kline had some kind of the same physical characteristics as the person in the bridge guy video. Do you recall that? Was that from the February 25th interview? I'm going to say, because I don't know, I just see it here marked as 2:13 on the video. Can't make this shit up. I don't recall. I didn't know. Okay. Okay, you saw Mr. Kline, right? Multiple times over the years. And just from a physical standpoint, are there some similar characteristics between him and the person that's in the bridge guy video? I would say he was bigger when you saw him. Through the years, yeah. And when did you first actually have physical contact with him? That would have been August. August 2020 is Vito's first. Okay. So 3 years after the video was taken, right? That's correct. Do you remember him failing that polygraph exam? Oh, McClellan. Oh, judge. Holy objection, objection, objection. Rozzy says, we're not in trial. This is a pretrial hearing. Okay. Court says, I understand what you're saying, but the nexus has to be proved by admissible evidence. And I sustain. Judge, it's my view, it may not be accurate because, again, in a hearing like this, the court's allowed to accept hearsay evidence, Thank you, thank you. My notes suggest, I do recall generally that there was an interview on August 21st of 2020. Do you recall that interview with Tony Kline? Tony Kline, yes, that's correct. Was that at the Carroll County Sheriff's Department? Peru State Police Post. Okay, I'm sorry. Now recall that at that time you had some tips you were working with that suggested that Tony Kline may have been involved in some murders. Do you recall that? I don't recall specifically. All right. Were you aware that he had a history of some violence? That is correct. And I do recall that some of that involved like domestic related violence. Is that right? Yes, sir. And did you have conversations with him about assaulting his wife at one point? I'm not sure if I did during the interview or not. Do you recall having a conversation with Tony Kline about him assaulting one of his own kids who was about 4 or 5 years old at the time? I believe so. and that he actually shoved the child's head in a toilet. Do you recall that? Yes, sir. Do you recall having a conversation with Tony Kline about him putting a shotgun to Kegan's mother's head at one point? I don't know if I spoke to Tony about that, but I do remember Kegan making statements about that. And do you recall Kegan making statements about the fact that his dad had a kind of a bad leg at one point, suggested he looked a little like the video of Bridge Guy? Kegan did make a statement about his father's leg. He even said that his dad wore clothing similar to that. I believe so. Hello? Is it accurate to say that there was a time when, well, Kegan Kline was ultimately arrested for crimes in Miami County? Is that right? Correct. Uh, so he hands the judge Defendant's Exhibit EEE. All right? And he says, this is an abstract of judgment, basically a sentencing order that reflects Mr. Kline's convictions from his Miami County case. Is it fair to say, just to summarize, and the judge can discern, she is to sort through those, but basically, is it accurate to say when the state police investigated Kegan Kline in this case, in the Delphi case, that resulted in him being charged with numerous offenses in Miami County related to child sex acts? It was a separate case that was spurred from this investigation, yes. Prompted by this investigation, correct. Basically, you unearthed information regarding child pornography and those types of things that when was taken by another investigative team and investigated. Law enforcement did it in 2017, yes. The result of that was, I don't remember how many charges there were, but I'm trying to count Roman numerals. Do you remember how many charges? McClellan. Okay. But it's admitted. So he was charged with a couple dozen counts involving child pornography and dissemination of that pornography. Correct? Correct. They were all referenced. Correct. Okay. And ultimately convicted. Is this a reflection of his convictions? Correct? Yes. Handing you what's been marked as F. 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 Copy of his charges. Essentially, the case report that stemmed from his Miami County charges. I would say a small version of it. I don't think it's a complete report, but it's a nice summary of kind of how all that was kicked off from there, right? Okay, very good. Thank you. I noted on page 2 here there were a number of phones that were referenced. iPhone, Samsung, Nextbook tablet. As far as you're aware, the phones that you would have recovered in the course of this investigation that prompted the Miami County case. So this investigation was separate from itself at that point. They took those devices for that case there. The Miami County case, yeah. But it's the same phones that you actually recovered, your team, correct. And other electronic devices, correct. Okay, so he admits it. He says, and finally, so it's fair to say that there was a point in time when Mr. Kline's in time when Mr. Kline's case or while Mr. Kline's case was pending in Miami County that he began communicating with your investigative team about his involvement in the Delphi murders case, correct? Or the Delphi murders, yes, sir, sir. And I recall he was doing that through his lawyer at the time, right? Yes, sir. And is it accurate to say that there was an occasion where there was an interview set up of him? I believe that might have been over at the Air Force Base, but I could be wrong. That's what we call Grissom. Remember, he went to Grissom. That's correct. Can you tell the judge approximately when that was? August of 2020. 22. August of 2022. So we're talking about a time frame that's pretty obvious, I guess. A couple months before Mr. Allen was arrested. Yes, sir. And at that point, there was a significant amount of resources that were directed toward Kegan Kline and his potential involvement. Is that accurate? That's correct. And you were one of the guys heading the charge. Yes, sir. And I believe I'm correct in saying that Officer Holman might have been involved in that interview at the Air Force Base. Yes, there was a core team that was involved with that. And Mr. Kline's lawyer, right? Correct. Hit the brakes. So Holman is also at Grissom during this thing, right? Put a pin in it. It was a videotaped interview, Correct? Yes, sir. From that interview, did Mr. Kline admit that he was at the trail on February 13th, 2017? He advised he was in the area with his father at the time. Grissom Air Force Base, 2022, right before Rick's arrested. Holman and Vito, Kegan's lawyer, and others meet at Grissom. Chris, Kegan tells them, I was in the area with my father. And he lived in Peru, right? That is correct. And so we're talking about Delphi. So he's saying he's in another place there in Delphi? Yes, sir. In 2022? At Grissom? When you say in the area, I mean, you're talking about here in Delphi. Yes, he said that. And did he acknowledge specifically, did Kegan Kline acknowledge specifically that he was actually at the cemetery that's located near the trails? That is correct. He was in the cemetery in a car. This is what he said. This is what he's told everyone. And this is what he tells these Unified Command guys over there at Grissom in 2022. So why are we saying this is a fantasy? And correct me if I'm wrong. That cemetery is probably within 2 or 3 or 400 yards from the crime scene. Oh, yeah, I'm not sure of the exact distance, but yes, it's in that area. Within a couple hundred yards from the crime scene. Have you been to the cemetery? I have. Is it fair to say that the cemetery butts right up against the wooded track where the girls were found? That is correct. Is it fair to say, that the cemetery abuts the area where the girls were found? Yeah, that's correct. Contiguous, as lawyers would say, right? Yes, sir. And so at that point, did your team set up or make arrangements to actually have Mr. Kline transported to the location to describe to your team what transpired on February 13th, 2017? Yes, to describe the way that was taken to the cemetery, the way that they drove there. You were interested in this route, right? Yes. I'm assuming interested in where he said he went, right? His destination. Correct. And is it fair to say that his lawyer did not participate in that part? You just took him out there on your own in a car without his lawyer present? One of our law enforcement team did, yes. And was that by arrangement? It wasn't like you did that without his lawyer's permission. Correct. Did Trooper Holman do that? Yes. Hello? Hello? Did Trooper Holman do that? Jerry Holman? Yeah. And is it accurate to say that Mr. Kline told your team in his formal interview that he had taken his father to the cemetery? Yeah, I don't remember which one said that, or what he said, who drove, but they were both went to the cemetery. Yes. I think he said something about it driving a Jeep of some sort. Yes, it was their red Jeep that they had. You see, that's the spin, y'all. That's the spin. And is it accurate to say that he communicated that his father at one point got out of the Jeep and walked into the wooded area? That is correct. No, it's the car. He said the car. He's told everyone he cared about it was a car. This entire red Jeep has to be wiped out of the collective consciousness of Delphi. Did he say his father came back at some point later in time within, I'm going to say an hour or two? I'm just kind of estimating. Yes, sir. And did he say he tell you that occurred during daylight hours? Yes, sir. February 13th. And This was on the day the girls came up missing. Correct. Did he tell your team that when his father came back, his father actually had blood on his pants? Yes, sir. And his father got back in the car with him? I'm not sure if he said it was on his pants, but he said he had blood on him, had somewhere. Did he tell you that his father ultimately did not speak specifically about what he had done when he was in the wooded tract? That's correct. I believe he said that they had a good time. All right, folks. So every single Dropbox denier who goes out there and says Kegan never said this, there are multiple instances out there in the real world for anyone who would actually take the time to go look of Kegan saying out in the real world. There are multiple instances behind the scenes where he has said this to individuals we have documented. And he's saying it at Grissom with Holman, Vito, others, and his lawyer present. He goes out to the cemetery and says, yes. And what's the quote again? He alleges his father comes back and says, we had a good time. His father said that they, meaning he and somebody else, had a good time? Correct. Referring that he was with somebody else in the wooded tract? Correct. To be fair, this is what Kegan Kline told your investigative team. That is correct. And it was of interest enough that you made arrangements to actually transport him out there to the cemetery and go through all this story with him on the site. On the site? You bring Kegan to the site and he tells his story? Correct. At the site, I should say. Correct? I'm sorry, can you repeat? At the site. At the cemetery? Yes. Yes, sir. Did Mr. Kline also communicate to you that at some point after that, there was some type of weapon that was discarded? Is the word I'm looking for? That's correct. So wait. So Kegan not only says all this, but then he says there's a weapon. So for all the fucking conspiracy theorists out there saying, no, it's a phone, it's only a phone, a weapon? So Kegan's saying there's a weapon that's discarded. Tell the judge what he told your team. He told us before they got home, they went over the bridge and he threw a cell phone into the river. I believe he said his father threw a knife into the river. He told us they went over a bridge. He threw a cell phone into the river. I believe he said his father threw a knife into the river. I mean, it's a logical extension that the knife may have been used in this crime. That's correct. So, what did you do as a team to try and recover the evidence? We organized a search of that river, and that's the Wabash River, right? Correct. And this was how many years after that you would have been trying to do that search? It would have been August of 2022. So not a chance of finding anything 5 years later, right? We actually found quite a few things from years past, just other items, right? Sure. But you didn't find a knife or a cell phone. We found multiple cell phones, multiple knives, I believe. I think a firearm or two. We found different items. Okay, public, get your notebooks out and put in your brains whenever you sensationalize this Wabash River search, what was found? Multiple cell phones, multiple knives, a firearm or two. Did you find anything that identified with the story Kline had given you? No. But you expended resources to try and get it done. Yes, sir. Dive team, all that kind of stuff. Yes, sir. At some point, did your team make efforts to try and connect the dots between the Kline family and Mr. Allen? Not at that time. So before we move on to this, question for all the really special people. What if they searched off the wrong damn bridge because he told them off the wrong damn bridge? Now, here's for the troll farm. We're going to get into this for the troll farm for the really retarded motherfuckers in the back. Did your team make efforts to try and connect the dots, I'll say, between the Kline family and Mr. Allen? Not at the time. Let me give you some context. So ultimately, Mr. Allen's arrested a couple months later, right? Correct. After his arrest, were there efforts by your team to try and connect Mr. Allen with the Kline family? That is correct. And those efforts were basically interviewing people in and around Miami County area. Yes, sir. Did you learn at some point that Mr. Allen had actually lived in Miami County? Yes, sir. And that his wife, Mr. Allen's wife, had lived in Miami County? That's correct. Did you also learn at some point that either one of them, Mr. Allen or his wife, lived somewhat near Mr. Tony Kline on 2nd Street in the same neighborhood? I wouldn't say it's the same neighborhood. Somewhere relatively close, 5-minute drive or so? Yes, sir. And is it fair to say that you were never able to actually connect Mr. Allen or his wife with the Kline family? Objection, 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 Judge! Let me ask it again. Is it accurate to say that you were never able to connect Mr. Allen or his wife to the Kline family? We interviewed multiple people said in their mind said there was no doubt that they knew each other, but we were not able to find anything to prove that they were together at one point, that they were associating on a consistent basis or anything. Correct. And there was never any kind of digital communication recovered that suggested there was a connection between the Klines and the Allens. Not that we recovered. No. And you tried to do that? Yes, sir. Troll farm. Cut your shit. Cut your shit. Stop your shit. The fact that two people live in the same town does not demand that they know each other. The fact that two people might know each other does not demand that they commit crimes together. If these bloodthirsty fucking monsters could not legitimately tie Richard Allen to Kegan and Tony Kline when it would have behooved them to do so, that means it's impossible. So why on earth would you try to use as a talking point now this stupid assumption that they were connected and they were operating CSAM together and they're somehow working together because they happen to live in Peru? Hey, I know a bunch of trolls, a bunch of bloodthirsty fucking motherfuckers who live in Peru who constantly harass us, engage in lawfare and harassment using the police directed squarely at myself and Noe, who live in Peru. So let me think. Those individuals must know Kegan and Tony Kline, and they must be connected, and they must be exchanging child pornography with Kegan and Tony Kline because, logic would dictate. Are your critical thinking skills lighting up at this point? Because you ask for proof. You consistently go out there and target individuals asking for proof. When the proof is shoved in your face, you deny it. But then you'll go around and you'll make wild leaps in logic and broad assumptions and controversialize innocuous bullet points. So he says, here's State's Exhibit GGG. Is it fair to say this is a summary of the information that you would have pulled from those phones of Kegan Kline that were of interest, all of his digital devices? And remember, like I said, half the shit's gone. With the child pornography, yes. Okay, but they're the same digital devices that you discovered in the course of this Delphi investigation, right? So the devices were seized under this case in the Miami County case. Okay, let me make sure I'm clear. You were interviewing Kegan Kline because of Anthony Schott's profile. Correct. The courses of those interviews, in the course of those interviews, you discovered all of these electronic devices, right? Once the search warrant was served on their residence from that, yes. And then those devices had all of this, what I'm going to call inappropriate material on them, right? That is correct. And does this report reflect the totality of the material that was found on the devices? And basically everything's blacked out on here? For that case, yes. Because of the content, correct. Just in summary, I guess at the conclusion, is it an accurate statement to say that Kegan Kline lied at various times to law enforcement throughout your investigation? That is correct. And I think what I'm going to hear is you believe, is it accurate to say that even he may have been lying to you about him even going to the cemetery that day? That is correct. He lied so many times you don't know what the truth is. Is that generally accurate? We were able to disprove much of the majority of his lies. Okay, so every time he lied to you, you were able to prove that he was lying to you? That is correct. So we really don't know what the truth was in some instances because he was not credible. Right, correct. Is that an odd twist to the end of this conversation? Isn't that an odd twist to the end of that conversation? I'll let you think about it for a moment. All right, give me a moment. Okay, now we're on to this particular filing, which is called memorandum in law of in support memorandum of law in support of admission of evidence of alternative theories of the crime and third party perpetrators. Okay? And we're gonna let's look at it like this. As you see, this is August 15th, 2024. Okay? I think we're going to be about here, starting at the bottom. Kegan Kline and Tony Kline. Kegan Kline is the son of Jerry Anthony Kline. He was 22 years old in February of 2017. And he and Jerry Anthony Kline resided in Peru, Indiana in February 2017. Detective David Vito testified that Kegan Kline was communicating with Liberty German using a fake Snapchat account under the name of Anthony Schatz in the days leading up to and on February 13th, 2017. The content of the messages is unknown. He further testified that Kegan Kline admitted to driving to Delphi, Indiana with his father, Jerry Anthony Kline, on February 13th, 2017, and that Kegan Kline waited in the vehicle while Jerry Anthony Kline went to the woods in the area where the Abigail Williams and Liberty German's bodies were ultimately found. Detective David Vito then testified that Kegan Kline stated that when Jerry Anthony Kline returned to the vehicle, he had blood on him. Roland Purdy, listen to this. Roland Purdy further testified that Kegan Kline admitted that they discarded a knife in the river when they were driving home. All of this evidence creates an inference that Kegan Kline and Jerry Anthony Kline murdered Abigail Williams and Liberty German. And look at this, Ron Logan. The bodies of Abigail Williams and Liberty German were located on February 14, 2017, on the property of Ron Logan, which is the deposition of Special Agent Nicole Robertson. Ron Logan lied to law enforcement about his whereabouts on February 13, 2017. Ron Logan's physical build is consistent with that of the individual in the video captured by Liberty German's iPhone on February 13th, 2017, and his voice is consistent with the voice in the audio. The evidence that third parties killed girls in this matter is exculpatory, unique, and critical to Mr. Allen's defense. The crime scene included many findings that the killers practiced as a true and that this was a ritualistic crime. To be exculpatory, evidence must clear or tend to clear Mr. Allen of alleged fault or guilt. Richard Allen has zero ties to Asatru, Odinism, or the Vinlander Social Club, or Tony or Kegan Kline. The above evidence is exculpatory and unique and critical to Mr. Allen's defense. Okay. Let me make sure I got my page numbers together. Okay, good. We're good there. Now we're going to move on to this one. So I'm piecing together evidence for you. This is the motion for the court to certify court orders for interlocutory appeal pursuant to Appellate Rule 14 and request to rule expeditiously on said motion. Okay? This is from September 9th, 2024. September 9th, 2024. Okay, let me make sure I'm on the right page now, once again. Here we go. In its April 29th, 2024 motion in limine, the prosecution, Nicholas McClellan, requested the court prevent the defense. Bruh. present. So the prosecutor on April 29th, 2024, requested that Gull prevent the defense from presenting suspects Kegan and Tony Kline. Although credible evidence existed that A, Kegan Kline had arranged to meet one of the victims on the day of the murders. B, Kegan Kline implicated his father, Tony Kline, as being involved in the murders. C, law enforcement tried to tie Richard Allen to Tony Kline and arguably only interrogated Richard Allen because of law enforcement's initial belief that Tony Kline and Richard Allen knew each other and committed crimes together. Did you guys know that? Look at number C again. Law enforcement tried to tie Richard Allen to Tony Kline and arguably only interrogated Richard Allen because of law enforcement's initial belief that Tony Kline and Richard Allen knew each other and committed the crimes together. And remember what we just looked at. Vito admits that they failed to ever, although interviewing many people in Miami County, they failed to be able to connect at all, personally or digitally, Richard Allen with either Tony or Kegan Kline. But it was their belief which caused them to interrogate Rick Allen. D, law enforcement officials discovered a cache of child pornography on Kegan Kline's personal cell phone during the course of their investigation. And E, law enforcement officials actually transported Kegan Kline to an area near the crime scene, and now we know it's the crime scene and the cemetery, to corroborate his version of what he and his father did near the crime scene on the day in question. Furthermore, on this same April 29th, 2024 motion in limine, paragraph 7K, the prosecution requested the court, Judge Gull, prevent the defense from presenting evidence of third-party suspect Ron Logan, even though credible evidence existed that A, the bodies were found on Ron Logan's property, B, an FBI-authored probable cause affidavit by Nicole Robertson stated that Ron Logan, one, placed a cell phone call on or around his property around 2:09 p.m. Two, Ron Logan provided false information about his activities during the times the crimes were committed and employed others to assist in deceiving law enforcement, and furthermore plotted an alibi. He did plot an alibi, and he went and created an alibi for a crime that he had not yet been discovered. And three, a court found that said probable cause affidavit provided probable cause that the evidence of the murders would be found on Logan's property. So there was probable cause to go and search Ron Logan's property. And yet the judge deems that there's no that this is not enough probable cause or evidence to allow as a alternative theory of the crime to explain the crime to the jury, like the appeal is now claiming, that we've been reading through this appeal, and it's a major component. It's one of the three major components of the appeal, that the judge denied the defense the opportunity to explain to the jury an alternative version of the crime scene. All right? And of course, I want to move to this. Let me try this. Where am I? I've lost myself. There I am. Okay, we got to go quite a bit down. for this. I'm going to jump way ahead. Now let's go here. And what do you think happened? On September 4th, 2024, naturally, the court, Judge Gall, issued an order granting the state's motion to eliminate, excluding evidence of third party motives, including evidence of Odinism, cult or ritualistic killings, Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, Johnny Messer, Elvis Fields, Ned Smith, Rod Abrams, Kegan, Kline, Jerry Kline, and Ron Logan. Again, page 186 here. Look at it. And now we're going to move to March 4th, 2025. Richard Allen's verified reply memorandum to State of Indiana's response to preserve and produce and request for sanctions. The prosecution's response brief provided proof that the state of Indiana failed to turn exculpatory evidence over to the defense. I'm only going to read the highlighted areas. In his response, the prosecutor glosses over the fact that he was in possession of letters that he failed to turn over to the defense before trial, even though in a February 13th, 2025 email, he denied possessing such letters. Okay. This is regarding Reese Davis's whistleblowing on both Ron Logan and Kegan Kline. Prosecutor McClellan is not the arbiter of exculpatory evidence of whether he has an obligation to turn it over. Based upon McClellan's February 28, 2025 filing, we now know that the state of Indiana had certain letters in its possession in October of 2024, but failed to turn those letters over to the defense until February 28, 2025. The prosecutor only produced those letters after the defense sought the letters, being forced to file a motion to produce letters after the prosecution failed to admit being in possession of those letters. A pattern of withholding exculpatory evidence may lead to reversal and a new trial. In Pruitt, the Court of Appeals reversed the conviction when soon after the conviction, the defense counsel learned of evidence that the prosecutor failed to turn over to the defense prior to trial. At Allen's trial, the defense indicated that the evidence supported that on February 13, 2017, the victims were abducted. That means kidnapped, taken somewhere else, perhaps in a vehicle. Like, let's put our brains to this because people forget. The defense indicated that evidence supported on February 13th the victims were abducted, taken somewhere else, perhaps in a vehicle, and then during the early morning hours of February 14th, after the search parties had left the area, were ultimately transported to the location where they were found on February 14th, 2017. And it's true. And you know, I'll skip it. It's to come. Further, the defense's theory was that evidence strongly supported that multiple people were involved in the abduction and murder of the victims. The defense theories were detailed in the defense's opening statement and throughout the trial or in offers to prove from August 1st, 2024. Reese Davis's letters provide exculpatory information that supports the defense theory and negates the state's theory, and also provides other information that the defense could have utilized for trial or to support its request for third-party suspect evidence to be admitted into evidence. In Davis's letters that the state of Indiana did not turn over to the defense before or during trial, Reese Davis stated that Kegan Kline, a key suspect in the case, confessed to the murders. A key suspect confessing to murders is exculpatory evidence, as it tends to establish a criminal defendant's innocence. At a minimum, Carroll County local rule required McClellan to immediately turn over those letters to the defense, even if he believed that the letters did not need to be turned over because of Davis's claim that Richard Allen was involved in the crimes alongside Kline and Logan. Okay? When police or prosecutors conceal significant exculpatory or impeaching material in the state's possession, it is ordinarily incumbent on the state to set the record straight. So the question is not whether the defendant would more likely than not have received a different verdict with the evidence, but rather, in its absence, he received a fair trial understood as a verdict worthy of confidence. This is an appellate issue. In this case, Kegan Kline's confessions to the murders and also Kegan Kline's claim that Ron Logan was involved. But again, Kegan's confession to the murders and also his claim that Ron Logan was involved are clearly exculpatory statements. Those were the two most likely suspects during the investigation. If it could be shown that they knew each other, that would be a significant fact for the court to consider when determining matters of third party suspect defense, and also for a jury to consider. And let's be clear here, Kegan Kline did admit that he and his father did know Ron Logan. Again, Kegan Kline repeatedly alleged that him and his father did indeed know Ron Logan. The fact that Kline also implicated Allen would not have been of concern of the defense, as the defense knows that Allen had no linkage to either Kline or Logan. And again, if he did have a linkage to the Klines or Ron Logan, it would have been proven by law enforcement and absolutely would have been used in this trial. And also because the evidence supported that Allen was with his wife the night of February 13th and the morning of February 14th, when Kline is claiming Allen was with Logan and Kline committing the crimes. Had the defense known of the information contained in the Reese Davis letters, it would have renewed its motion for third-party suspect defense regarding Kline and Logan and would have further investigated these claims. Perhaps the defense would have sought a continuance to investigate the ties between Logan and Kline, which we now know exist. The defense could have argued that Kegan Kline knew the details of the crime that no one else knew, and furthermore, that he was protecting an unknown third party by claiming that Allen was the third party after Allen's arrest. The defense could do none of that, as well as any other number of legal, strategic, procedural maneuvering, if it was in the dark about the contents of the letters while the prosecution was fully aware of that information. The details that Kegan Kline provided to Davis, or Reese Davis, added to the exculpatory value of those letters. On page 4 of one of the letters, Davis claims that Kline detailed that the girls' bodies were moved 3 times. 3 times they moved bodies. Remember, I said at the beginning of the show, Robert Ives claimed the bodies were moved and staged. Kegan Kline claimed to Reese Davis that the bodies were moved 3 times and that they were killed where they were found, and furthermore, that the bodies were staged. Again, a separate action. And as I said at the beginning of the show, Kegan Kline acknowledges his prior interest in witchcraft and the occult. And what is not said in here is that what Kegan told Reese Davis, one of the very important things that Kegan told Reese Davis was that he placed the sticks on their bodies and staged their bodies using his former knowledge of witchcraft and occult to, quote, make it look like something an old man wouldn't do. These facts are consistent with the defense theory and the facts that oppose the state's theory. Furthermore, in the letter, Davis claims Kegan Kline detailed how the killers got nervous and left town in their own cars, with at least one of them, Ron Logan, going to Lafayette to get rid of evidence. It is known that Ron Logan went to Lafayette at some point to purchase exotic fish to create an alibi and destroy evidence. These are all facts that Reese Davis would not know, but that the killer would know. And all of those facts tend to establish Richard Allen's innocence. Reese recorded that Kegan told him that the scene was staged and furthermore mentioned that the girls could not be moved because the search parties were everywhere throughout the night at that time, meaning that the girls were moved to the place they were found only after the search party left, which is absolutely consistent with the blood-curdling screams that were heard at the 2 a.m. hour. This is just as the defense claimed, thereby supporting the defense theory and negating the state's theory. Furthermore, in an interview at Newcastle, Reese provided further details. In that interview, Reese claimed that Kegan Kline stated the girls were handcuffed to each other. After the meeting, defense counsel Jennifer Auger, Andy Baldwin, and investigator Matt Hoffman viewed the crime scene and autopsy photos to determine whether there were any indicators on the victims' wrists that would support this new information that the victims were handcuffed to one another. The admittedly non-expert eyeballs of the attorneys and investigator observed straight lines on the left-hand wrist of both girls. Let's go over that. Matt Hoffman, Jennifer Auger, and Andy Baldwin, after learning of this, viewed the crime scene and autopsy photos and observed straight lines on the left-hand wrist of both girls, which could indicate one victim walked immediately behind the other with each of their left hands handcuffed to each other so that they could not run away. If the defense had received these letters, it could have learned facts from Davis during a deposition and then had experts view the same photos to determine whether the photos were indicative of the girls being handcuffed. And again, what Reese says is that Abby escaped from the handcuffs and then was re-handcuffed. Okay? These depositions could have revealed additional information, including whether at some point in time Kegan Kline finally admitted that Richard Allen had nothing to do with the crimes, as Reese Davis stated to counsel during a jail interview on February 12th, 2025. Okay? In other words, Kegan Kline admitted to Reese that Richard Allen had nothing to do with this crime. On February 12th, 2025, Reese revealed this to the defense team. This would also show that Kegan Kline's claim about the activities of the third person involved with him and Logan was inconsistent with Richard Allen's whereabouts the night of February 13th and early morning of February 14th. But we know that Ron Logan and Kegan Kline and Tony Kline could have definitely hung around. We also know that there were a group of individuals the night before what we've referred to as the pig roast, but what many call the cemetery party. It actually did occur. Ron Logan himself confessed that there was a party and he kicked them out to the cemetery. The third or fourth or fifth party could have been one of those individuals who could have had Asatru or Odinist or Vinlander affiliations. Additionally, the defense could have asked the DOC to provide video from the pod where Reese Davis and Kegan Kline were housed to determine whether Kline and Davis were frequently talking. If the video shows that Davis and Kline talked to each other well beyond 2 times, then it could be determined that Kline was lying. Whereas if the video shows that Davis only talked to Kline 2 times, then it would show that Davis was lying. Either way, the defense had a right to those letters to conduct its own investigation concerning the veracity of the contents of those letters. McClelland's claim that he did not turn over the Reese Davis letters because he made his own determination that the letters were not in fact exculpatory denied Richard Allen's attorneys the opportunity to conduct an investigation from the information contained in those letters and to determine what to do, if anything, concerning the content of those letters. In his February 28, 2025 response, McClelland makes much noise about Baldwin attempting to put into public domain information through the filing before verifying the information. Okay? On February 13, 2025, McClelland responded to Baldwin as follows: the information that we have concerning Reese Davis was forwarded to you as part of discovery. You had every opportunity to call Mr. Davis at trial or at the hearing on third-party motive. You chose not to. Your strategy was not to call those people. The trial is now over. Richard Allen was convicted. If you feel you need to file additional motions, then file them. The state will respond appropriately. The state will follow any orders of the court in regards to these motions. You see the fucked up attitude? And there's more I'm going to say about these letters, because what is not being said about these letters is some of these letters, the exact letters that Nicholas McClelland alleges he does not have and could not find and must have been discarded, are the exact letters which included handwritten letters from Kegan Kline giving his own statements and confessions. Isn't that rich? Before filing any motions, Attorney Baldwin made one more attempt to simply obtain the letters. The defense responded on February 13th by asking McClelland whether he was admitting or denying that he had received letters from Reese Davis in the months leading up to the 2024 trial. McClelland could have quickly answered those questions and then provided the letters to the defense and perhaps avoided any more filings. McClelland also could have asked Baldwin to hold off on filing anything while he gathered the letters to turn over to the defense. Instead, McClelland chose to ignore the defense's request, prompting the defense to file its February 14, 2025 motion to preserve and produce the Reese Davis letters. It should be noted that the defense was seemingly up against a deadline of sorts. If the defense failed to file their motion, the judge might rule on the motion to correct errors beforehand, which arguably would prevent the defense's ability to file the motion to preserve and produce, as such a ruling would arguably kick the case to the appellate attorneys. Also to note was that in his February 13th email, McClelland claimed to have provided the defense all the Reese Davis letters during discovery. This was simply a lie, untrue, and misleading statement typed on his computer sent to the defense. Through his February 28th, 2025 filing, the court learned that McClelland actually was in possession of those letters on February 13th, 2025, which contradicted McClelland's representation to the defense that everything had been turned over. McClelland chose to intentionally mislead defense counsel about his possession of Reese Davis's letters. McClelland was getting called out by the defense once again, and once again was ultimately forced to turn over the letters, perhaps out of fear that the defense would eventually gather the DOC records that would then expose McClelland's misrepresentation. McClelland's misrepresentation has yet to be explained by McClelland, the court, or anyone else. In the prosecution's response to the defense's motion to correct errors, in an apparent attempt to discredit Reese Davis, this is interesting. McClelland claims that he had information that Reese Davis had claimed that Ron Logan took batteries out of Libby's phone. This is curious because the prosecution has failed to produce any document or videotape in which Reese Davis makes such a claim. The defense has found nothing. This leads to serious questions of where did McClelland learn this fucking information from? Because it was something that Reese Davis was saying. So where did he learn it from? The defense is actually left with one of two possibilities. McClellan has additional Reese Davis letters, reports, or video from where he gained that information, or for reasons unknown, McClellan made up the story. Well, we know he didn't make it up because Reese Davis still insists on that story. And remember this. Nicholas McClellan gaslit the court and the entire world because he said, you can't remove an iPhone battery. You can't remove a smartphone battery. You can't remove a smartphone. There couldn't have been any battery taken. It can't remove a smartphone battery. Well, what he didn't admit is that what Kegan, Ron, and Reese all claim is that Ron had a flip phone and that Ron took the battery out of his flip phone so that his activities to go dispose of the burner phone would not be revealed. Can you take a battery out of a flip phone in 2017? Yes. Unfortunately, as has been the historical pattern of the prosecution, McClellan made the decision to hold on to the letters until called out by the defense, much like he made the decision to hold on to other exculpatory evidence over the course of this case. Again, Indiana courts of appeal have commented on the patterns of withholding exculpatory evidence and have even reversed convictions when prosecutors have exhibited such patterns. Defense counsel has practiced over 30 years. During that time frame, if the prosecution in any other county ever received exculpatory evidence or learned that certain evidence had been destroyed, it would immediately contact the defense and tell them on the phone or in person that the evidence had been destroyed. In this case, the defense was lucky to even notice Mullen and McClellan's claim that the crucial video was taped over as much as such information was sandwiched between other minutiae contained in a document. This should not be overlooked. In fact, those crucial videotaped interviews, if they were actually quote unquote taped over, that would be colossal news that Mullen and McClellan would not have forgotten. Losing such evidence would be the talk of unified command due to the serious nature and potential serious consequences of losing such important evidence. This is all the deleted evidence. To lose such crucial evidence early on in a case would not be the type of thing that anyone would ever leave out of their memory. Steve Mullen nor the minds in Unified Command would ever forget about that. Therefore, when the defense requested the prosecution turn over those interviews, Mullen and McClellan would absolutely have known immediately that this was a problem. And they would have said to the defense or to themselves, oh no, those interviews were erased back in 2017. I need to immediately tell the defense. I should have told them that when they got the case, but I'll do it now. It's absolutely inexplicable that Mullen and McClellan would not have remembered in August 2023, when the defense first requested those interviews, that those interviews had purportedly been recorded over. Yet neither McClellan nor Mullen told the defense of this earth-shattering news that Mullen had known for 6 fucking years at the time. To make matters worse for McClellan and Mullen, when the defense finally learned of the so-called recorded over interviews, the defense asked if there were documents memorializing exactly what happened to those interviews, how it happened, and the crucial evidence that the crucial evidence had been recorded over. Whoops. Surely a report existed that would explain this terrible accident that caused crucial evidence to be forever lost. However, no such report had yet been tendered to the defense. At some point later in time, the defense finally received such a report. But listen, this is the kicker. It was drafted by Steve Mullen, and inexplicably, it was undated. Because if you don't lie, if you don't put the date, then you're not lying about the date, right? You know what I mean? This is lies by omission. No one knows if the report was drafted in 2017 or sometime in 2024 or anywhere in between. That undated document that was coughed up after this all fell apart was entered as an exhibit at the March 18th, 2024 motion to dismiss. This undated document is not normal, nor the normal way that law enforcement and prosecution operate. Neither McClellan or Mullen or anyone else in Unified Command has ever explained to the court or anyone else why they did not immediately alert to the defense that crucial evidence sought by the defense had been purportedly recorded over. Neither McClellan nor Mullen or anyone else ever explained to the court or anyone else why it took 5 months before providing a document detailing the claim to Mullen of what happened that was mysteriously or suspiciously undated. Those were 5 valuable months during which Richard Allen's counsel could have been investigating the claim that those interviews were recorded over. This is not normal. Then, as you all know, there was the Todd Click letter. Normally, this letter from Todd Click would cause a normal prosecutor to immediately contact the defense lawyers by phone to alert them that the prosecutor had received this information that clearly tended to be exculpatory. However, that didn't happen either. Instead, Nicholas McClellan held on to the contents of that Todd Click certified mailing for over 4 months. This is handicapping the defense. You know about Jerry Holman and the missing Purdue professor and the lies. That thing has been leaked by the cranks, right? They've leaked that audio recorded uh, 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 interview with Jeffrey Turco, in which you hear clearly what Jeffrey Turco says. What has happened throughout the entirety of this case is not normal. Prosecutors not turning over exculpatory evidence to the defense is not normal. Prosecutors holding on to exculpatory evidence until being forced to provide it to the defense by complaints from the defense is not normal. Prosecutors claiming that they can't locate a key exculpatory witness's identity, a witness that purportedly altered the way the case was investigated, is not normal. Learning that the prosecutor had knowledge of the witness's identity in spite of an email sent to defense claiming that he may never learn of the witness's identity is not normal. The prosecution having no explanation for not providing exculpatory evidence is not normal. Having no explanation as to why uh, a report that attempted to explain why key evidence was forever lost and was not dated is not normal. Having a seasoned law enforcement officer recant two prior sworn statements concerning a key piece of exculpatory evidence that the ISP claims it cannot locate is not normal. Finally, having a prosecutor claim in an email that he provided all the Reese Davis letters to the defense before trial when just 14 days later he was forced by the court to admit that what he had represented as truth in his email was in fact not true is not normal. Nor is it normal that one of those letters can't even be located, and that's the one that contains the Kegan Kline letters. And that the prosecution has no explanation for this this missing letter and with that contained the Kegan Kline statement, not normal. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is just a touch of the flavor of the problem in what we're dealing with here. Okay, that's why I titled this show Delphi. What is it all about all this? Kegan Kline, CSAM, and the infamous Dropbox of Indiana. What is it all about this? So I'm looking for something that I failed to upload ahead of time. Where did I put it? Let's see. Come on, Prof. Where is it? All right, here we go. It's on the way. While it loads, I want to thank everybody for being in the chat, participating in this live stream, and everyone on the replay for leaving your comments down below. We truly appreciate the interactions in the comment section and in the live stream live chats. Please do remember to subscribe, hit the like, share this content, study this content, and support the channel. You can support with super chats, cash apps. I have a GoFundMe. Everything's in the link tree that's pinned at the top of the live chat and in the About Me section of the YouTube page. I appreciate all the support. Okay, now let me pull up this last slide so we can get out of here. Okay, here it is. I'm just going to bring you back full circle to this absolutely important excerpt here from the very interview that started this entire unfolding. And that is the interview of Kegan Kline, the transcript in which we learn the following: that from your Dropbox account off your phone, we have started one of the largest child pornography investigations ever undertaken in the state of Indiana. The Dropbox. All of this is about the Dropbox. In my opinion, this entire thing is about the Dropbox. Remember at the beginning of the show, I asked you to please go and look at my playlist titled Jalen Rain or The Club of Lafayette. It's my opinion that this Dropbox was used as a menu of sorts. Oh, what do you mean by that, Prof? Because you see, I think too many people have too limited a perspective. So I'm going to clear it up for you now because I've told people this privately behind the scenes, but I'm going to say it publicly now so you will understand exactly what I'm indicating here. Now imagine we can look at this in two different ways. You can look at it in the most limited, stupid way, or you could look at it in the most reasonable and encompassing way. So let's look at it in the stupid way first. The stupid way is the way 90% of the public looks at this Dropbox. They think, oh, well, yeah, sure, yeah. Yeah, Kegan Kline had lots of CSAM. Yeah, sure. They opened one of the largest child pornography investigations in the state of Indiana. Okay, yeah, because there's probably people sharing CSAM. No, nope, because that's not how it works. That's not how it works. You see, CSAM is shared all over the internet. That's how they get it, right? They don't need a Dropbox for that. Now imagine if you're a criminal, you're in an enterprise that's for profit. Let's say, hypothetically, they're trafficking women or children. Let's say you got customers who are willing to pay you to provide the target. As Jalen Rain claims in her videos that I'm imploring you, please go watch. Consider you have potential customers. Those customers have different predilections. Some like young girls, some like young boys, some like older girls, some like older boys, some like blondes, some like brunettes, some like thin, some like heavy. It's like a restaurant. You don't just go into a restaurant and take whatever you get. But if you have the money to pay for it, you walk into that restaurant and you ask, what are your options? A menu, so to speak. And you choose from that menu your preferences. And that's exactly what I believe this Dropbox was about. This Dropbox was a resource for potential customers to go into and select the child or person victim of their choosing. After the buyer selects the individual, that individual is then targeted and kidnapped. When that individual or that child is kidnapped, they're grabbed and they're brought to a holding place. Just like Jalen Rain said. They're then picked up by the buyer and brought away. I would assume most never return. Most never return. The intention here was to grab Libby, bring her out of state. It went bad. Oh, it never happens, Prof. It never happens. Really. We have one of the people in Delphi who were literally was sold. You guys know. I don't have to say it. Look, talk about it in the chat. There's someone in Delphi who was sold to a man out of state and who eventually returned. You don't think this happens? Let me guess. How is Epstein providing children to buyers? How do people in the Middle East provide children to buyers? How do people in Europe provide victims to buyers? It's all the same. The same way that people in the US provide victims to their buyers. So when you think of this Dropbox, think in broader terms. We're not just talking about sharing pictures. I think we're talking about trafficking children. And if these girls ended up dead in Delphi as a result of that, that is the biggest bombshell in this entire case. It makes all of the bridge guy bullshit footage go away. It makes all of the theatrics of Doug Carter go away. It makes all of the noise online from the troll farm and the mean girls and all in between, all of this chaos that you witness uh, on a day to day basis in this case, it makes all of this go away and everything comes into focus. And that's why all of us on the receiving end of this shit are receiving it because this is that which should not be told. And that's my opinion. And I'm sticking to it. So I hope that you all enjoyed tonight's show. Um, I did not intend a long show, and I did not even necessarily want to come and do this show, but I felt it was really necessary in light of what's happening this week. And there are things behind the scenes that have not been explained to you yet, but there's a severe amount of targeting going on right now. And the thread that ties it all together are that the individuals being targeted are the individuals whistleblowing on this angle. And that's something to think about. There's no death threats, no cease and desist, no calling of law enforcement, and no intimidation that's going to stop this from being expressed. And so we carry forward. Anyway, it's the late hour, so I'm going to get out of here, and I want to thank everyone for being here, and truly do appreciate it. All new viewers, I truly do welcome you. I'll be glad to hear from you, especially in the comment section on the replays. I look forward to seeing your input. Anyhow, I'd like to thank everyone in the chat personally for the wonderful presence they provide, especially our donors tonight. So like Swade Smith, thank you very much, Swade. Deb731, thank you very much, Deb. Kate, thank you very much, Kate. Rebecca Ann, thank you so much. Miss K, thank you so much for the super chats. And anyone who might send me support in any other ways, I thank you so much for your support. And let me thank Dewey, Becky, Lisa, Claremont, Critter Mama, Swade Smith, Christina, Heavy Metal Rehab, Quadaxel Mimi, Miss K again, Ocaresto, Skip Jansen, Advenue 03, that's Noe, Sheridan Tibbetts, Big Fishy, Matt Payton, Silence Woman, Monkey Lady, Love and Light for All, Trial Junkie, Yoten Yeager, Snoop Sleuth, Happy Marigold, Miss Pie Crust, Dieter, Victims News on Air, Erica Morse, Adrian, Dark Arts by Adrian, Mr. Court of Public Opinion, I'm trying to catch everyone. David Rogers. I might have missed a bunch of you. I apologize. Just let me know, and I'll say it on the way out. But Fur Baby Daddy was here super early. It's a New Day was here. Pertinent was here. And I'm seeing a lot of names, but I think I caught up most of them. Thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate it, genuinely. I really do. So thank you all, and good night. Coach Cruz approved. Team Abby and Libby on deck. And I appreciate all of the interaction with the channel and all the input. Nancy Drew 101. Hey, thank you, Nancy Drew. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. My voice is shot. What's up, lawyer's daughter? My voice is shot, so I'm out of here. God bless. Good night. God bless Libby and Abby. God bless the United States of America. We need it. All right. See y'all guys later. And we're out of here.